this administration is profoundly evil in ways that are difficult for Americans to comprehend. Now, the problem is he's back.
Yeah.
And I'm convinced that even if the American people get their act together on him, and they're starting to realize that. I mean, there was this great article, I hate to say great article. We have reached a stage of illegality, immorality, and depravity in a federal administration that no one could have ever thought.
George Conway didn't come to play. He opened with a chilling line. This administration is profoundly evil. Not wrong, not misguided, evil. And he said it without flinching. That's the moment the tone shifted, because Conway wasn't offering opinion. He was diagnosing a national crisis. He wasn't ranting either. He wasn't raising his voice or throwing punches. Instead, he laid it out with eerie calm, illegality, immorality, and a level of depravity that Americans are only just beginning to grasp. And right at the center of that darkness, Donald Trump. This is where the Donald Trump meltdown begins. Not with an insult, but with the truth. Conway's delivery felt more like a eulogy than an attack. Not for a person, but for the idea of a functioning presidency. That quiet tone made it even more brutal. When someone calmly calls out a leader as dangerous and corrupt and backs it with real-world damage, it sticks. And the most haunting part, Conway didn't say Trump is done. He warned that he's back and stronger. The chaos of his first run wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Conway hinted that the system didn't just survive Trump, it normalized him. That's the fuel for the ongoing Donald Trump meltdown, because Trump's power depends on image, the winner, the outsider, the hero. But Conway stripped that away. He didn't attack a man, he exposed a myth. Once that illusion is broken, all that's left is the record. Lawsuits, scandals, failed businesses, and a trail of destruction. Conway didn't yell to be heard. He let the truth do the talking. And in Trump's world, that's more dangerous than any insult.
Cult. I mean, that's the only way you can describe it. And everyone has, it consists of basically two groups of people, mostly. I mean, that's basically what just happened here with Nikki Haley. And the person who has really lost it the most is Donald Trump. Some people who have basically completely lost it. The people we see in the House of Representatives. And then there are people who are basically afraid to call out.
When George Conway called it a cult, he didn't blink. He wasn't joking. He meant every word. And honestly, he wasn't wrong. This wasn't political disagreement. This was about blind loyalty, tribal thinking, and a system so broken that even the absurd starts to feel normal. Donald Trump didn't just create a base. He built a belief system, one where facts don't matter. Logic gets tossed out, and anyone who questions him becomes an instant enemy. Conway pointed it out with surgical calm. Those who follow Trump fall into two groups: the ones who fully bought into the chaos and the ones who are too scared to call it out. That's where the real danger lies, because when people in power stay quiet out of fear, the madness doesn't just continue, it multiplies. Conway didn't need to scream. He didn't need to throw around insults. Just calling it what it is, a cult, hit harder than anything else could. And that's exactly why the Donald Trump meltdown continued to spiral. It's not just the accusation, it's the exposure. When you take someone who thrives on being untouchable and calmly point out the cracks in the foundation, it shakes them. Trump's entire image depends on control. Conway's analysis ripped that illusion wide open. This clip shows what happens when the truth is spoken without fear. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, but it's deadly effective, because once you realize this isn't about politics, it's about power, fear, and control, you see the entire Trump machine for what it really is. And once people start seeing clearly, Trump's grip gets weaker. That's why Conway's words didn't just sting, they caused a rupture.
I think, generally speaking, not in every single case, less government is better than more, because you don't want too powerful a government because you may not like the next government. A disease of liberalism in the 60s and 70s when I came of political age, and now it's a horrible metastasis in the right that would say that, oh, well, let's see, in order to figure out whether this particular gun regulation is constitutional under the Second Amendment, we have to look very specifically at the statutes that were passed in Maryland in 1645.
At first, it sounds like a harmless political opinion. Less government is better than more. But George Conway wasn't making a libertarian argument. He was pulling back the curtain on the dangerous mindset infecting the right. The kind of logic that paved the way for someone like Donald Trump Trump to seize power, then twist it to serve only himself. The way Conway frames it is chilling. He talks about how a disease of liberalism mutated, not into progressive chaos, but into a right-wing obsession with twisting constitutional logic. Suddenly, we're not talking about policy. We're talking about going back to laws written in 1645 to justify modern chaos, and that's the moment it clicks. This isn't about governing. It's about weaponizing history to hold onto power. It's about creating a legal maze so tangled that no one knows what's real anymore. That confusion, that's the point, because when people feel lost, they're easier to control. That's how you get a Donald Trump meltdown that never truly ends, because the system is warped to protect it. Conway didn't need to say Trump's name here. The point was clear. This entire movement isn't grounded in principle, it's grounded in paranoia. The constant need to drag America backward just to keep control. They aren't defending rights, they're distorting them, and Trump has made that the heart of his political identity. This clip wasn't flashy, it wasn't loud, but it peeled back a dangerous truth, that behind every slogan and culture war, there's a calculated strategy to keep power locked in the hands of people who fear accountability. Conway just happened to put that strategy into plain words, and in doing so, he showed exactly why Donald Trump and his allies melt down when faced with calm, undeniable facts.
He's the crazy one, and everybody is getting more crazy than he is. And as Nikki Haley pointed out when she was telling the truth for a couple of weeks in the spring, I mean, say it's 74, 75 degrees, he's saying it's freezing. You know, he's the lies about the election. I mean, he's mentally unstable and he's getting worse. And we can see it every day in the courthouse. We can see it when he's standing out there complaining about the temperature when thermometers in the courtroom.
When George Conway says Donald Trump is mentally unstable, he's not trying to be edgy. He's pointing out something we've all been watching unfold in real time. And in this clip, the picture he paints is almost surreal. Trump yelling that it's freezing inside a 75 degrees courtroom? That's not just delusion. That's detachment from reality. This isn't about disagreeing on policy or ideology. Conway is sounding the alarm that the man who once held the highest office in the country is spiraling. Publicly, erratically, and without shame. And worse, people are still cheering him on. That's the scariest part of the Donald Trump meltdown. Well, it's not happening in isolation. It's happening with a crowd behind him. Nikki Haley even had a moment of honesty, admitting Trump wasn't just wrong, he was unraveling. And like Conway points out, you can see it every day in the courthouse. The frantic rants, the victim complex, the wild accusations. This isn't strategy. This is a man cracking under pressure, live for the world to see, and still, some people refuse to acknowledge it. Maybe they're afraid, maybe they're too deep in the cult to admit they've been duped. But the warning signs aren't subtle anymore. They're screaming. And Conway is one of the few willing to say it plainly. Trump isn't just losing control of his campaign, he's losing control of himself. This part of the clip hits harder because it's not about policy, it's about mental stability, or the lack of it. And when the man at the center of the political storm can't even process reality, you're not just looking at a flawed leader, you're looking at a walking disaster, unraveling in slow motion. And that's the heart of the ongoing Donald Trump meltdown. It's loud, chaotic, and impossible to ignore.
I believe that even if things turn around publicly, I don't think they're going to turn around publicly fast enough to prevent some of the bad things that I think are going to happen. And the administration did in a whole bunch of agencies was fire en masse the probationary employees. And I don't remember exactly how long you're a probationary employee when you're hired, and it has to be individualized. They did not do that, because they just fired everybody en masse. They pretend that, oh yes, we made a determination, but that's it's bullshit.
This is the part no one wants to talk about. The long-term damage left behind by Donald Trump's administration. George Conway doesn't sugarcoat it. He flat out says, even if the public wakes up now, it might already be too late to stop what's coming. That's not pessimism. That's experience talking. In this clip, Conway exposes a quiet but devastating purge. Agencies across the board were stripped of critical staff. Probationary employees fired in bulk, not because they failed, but because they weren't loyal enough. No real evaluations, no due process, just a mass wipeout to make room for blind obedience. And they tried to pass it off as standard procedure. Please, Conway calls it what it is, *TT. That moment speaks volumes. Because this wasn't just political restructuring, it was an attempt to erase independence from the federal system, to turn every agency into a tool that served not the country, but Donald Trump's Trump's personal agenda, and that's the kind of groundwork that outlasts a presidency. This is where the Donald Trump meltdown becomes bigger than his tweets or courtroom tantrums. It's systemic. It's the kind of rot that lingers even after he's out of office, because the rules were rewritten quietly, behind the scenes, while the spotlight was on the chaos. And Conway, one of the few people who actually understands the machine, is sounding the alarm. The real twist: this kind of internal sabotage doesn't make headlines, but it breaks institutions. It creates a government that fears its own leader more than it serves its people. And that's exactly how Trump wanted it. This clip isn't loud, it's not flashy, but it's one of the most important, because it shows the cost of letting a Donald Trump meltdown reshape the system, not with fire, but with silent erasure.
Donald Trump, it's just ingrained in him. He wants retribution against his enemies. And by picking two people who are completely loyal to him, all this stuff, it's just these are the two perfect people to run an FBI that's controlled by a president who's a criminal. Spread his disinformation about January 6th and about Spygate even back in 2016. That's what Bongino got on the radar screen for, and COVID, which Bongino got thrown off of YouTube for permanently.
There it is, the core of Donald Trump's playbook: retribution. Conway lays it out plainly. Trump doesn't just want power, he wants revenge, and that desire runs so deep it's become part of who he is. It's not political strategy anymore, it's personal obsession. In this clip, Conway exposes a chilling truth: Trump surrounds himself with loyalists, not because they're qualified, but because they'll do whatever he says. That's how he sees leadership, not as responsibility, but as control. And when you give that mindset the keys to something like the FBI, you're not protecting democracy, you're undermining it from the inside. This is where the Donald Trump meltdown becomes truly dangerous. We're not talking about Twitter rants or press conference tantrums. We're talking about the weaponization of federal power, loyalty over law, obedience over oversight. Conway connects the dots directly, from the disinformation campaigns about January 6th, to the lies about Spygate, to the shady YouTube figures who got booted for peddling conspiracies. It all stems from one source: Trump's obsession with controlling the narrative at all costs. And that's what this really is, a war on truth. Conway's warning here isn't subtle. He's saying if Trump gets his way again, he won't just rewrite the rules, he'll erase the referees. The goal isn't justice, it's payback. And the scariest part, there are people lining up to help him do it. This isn't paranoia, it's pattern recognition, and Conway is pulling the curtain back on the machinery behind it all, showing us how deep the rot goes. Because every time someone exposes the truth, it pushes Trump further into meltdown mode. And when Donald Trump melts down, he doesn't go down alone. He tries to take the system with him.